you might have heard that we are releasing a big motion picture featuring Clayface for the first time in the history of and you guys have seen enough of Jim Lee. You're here for the Friends piece of it, and I've got some more friends. And the first one is James Watkins, the director of Clayface. Dry by now. So my first question to you is, faced with all these different incarnations of the character, how did you guys sit and decide what version you were going to go with? I mean, you ultimately chose Matt Hagen. Can you kind of walk us through the same process that I've been spending my lifetime career kind of sorting through these interpretations and trying to settle on one take?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there are so many brilliant interpretations of Clayface, Basil Carlyle onwards, and I think the Matt Hagen story really related to me, and it wasn't necessarily the acting story, it was the story of a guy who's worked really hard, and in our version, he poured himself out of nowhere and created a life, and then that gets pulled away. And the kind of relatability of how he tries to get his life back and goes through legal means, and then, that sense of I've been wronged and wanting vengeance. And I think the most interesting monsters for me are the monsters within us, and that journey that you can follow, and the origination of the story, and within Matt, that struggle, that internal struggle within him to, are you controlled by your emotions, or can you decide what you do?
That stood out, like that spoke to you and said, "This is Matt Hagen."
Yeah, it's funny casting. It's casting is a weird kind of alchemy because it's that collision between an actor and a role. And when Tom came in, he just had a quality that felt very Matt Hagen. He felt that he could bring that in his performance, and it was there was an accessibility to his wound, to his vulnerability, but also a kind of mutability. He could shift, and he could shift like Clayface really easily, and kind of mercurial, and become somebody else, and become just, I worked recently with James McAvoy, and they both have the same quality. They both have that quality of, one minute you think they're being cheeky, and then the next minute they just shift a bit devilish. And it's just fantastic to watch, just in their eyes, those little shifts in their smiles, those little micro gestures. It's a real pleasure, and I'm so proud of Tom.
And I think we're going to actually show you the trailer now.
Different comics, listen to a lot of different music. I was looking over a playlist I did earlier, and there's a Vangelis soundtrack that he made for a French documentary called Animals. It's something about the apocalypse of the animals in French.
Okay.
My French is not good, so I'm not going to attempt to say it. But I cast the net as wide as possible, just to sort of, in the hope that something is inspiring.
I read that you actually read Arkham Asylum, a serious house on a serious earth, and that kind of informed a piece of this, and that you watched Batman the animated series.
Well, I watched Batman the animated series when I was younger. I remember watching, which is such a seminal piece of just media, and it's informed so many things that have come since.
Yes.
And Arkham Asylum, Serious House and Serious Earth. Clayface features fairly briefly in that comic book, but I think the illustrations in that has such a strong and vibe that felt very evocative to me, that it hopefully informs something within the performance.
I was listening to another interview he said, and Tom very innocently said, "Yeah, I was into that stuff until about like 16, and kind of drifted off." And in my head, it's like, well, it's because you discovered girls, or they discovered you, and then for the rest of us, it didn't. It ended up here. But I thought it was just a very cute sort of remark, and maybe not self-aware, but that's why it happened, Tom. Just so you know, we kind of lost interest comments, and others of us kept with it. But anyway, so look, there's you guys got to work with a lot of horror luminaries. Obviously, producer Peter Safran of the Conjuring universe. Mike Flanagan, who did Life of Chuck, Midnight Mass. Can you talk a little about, was there a certain amount of pressure having so many people that, or is this a thing where you're amongst brothers and it helps inspire you to push and...
I mean, this is going to sound like I'm just doing the party line, but genuinely there wasn't pressure. I mean, it was, when I first spoke about how I wanted to do this, and you know, with James and with Peter and with everybody, and I kind of gave, this is my vision of it, this is what I want it to be, and I think, I remember actually I put together a whole thing, and there was lots of references, and there was some really icky reference stuff, and James kind of turned away and looked away, and was like, oh, and I realised he's actually quite squeamish, James Gunn, and yeah, but he was like looking away, but he was also like,
the movie is horrific.
Yeah, we go
horrifying,
there, just so you know, and but he was like, oh. And I'm like, are you okay? And he goes, no, it's great! So, you know, and obviously James comes from that background. Peter has got a real pedigree in that background. You know, and Flanagan from the original script, which we developed. But it's yeah, and also, as you know, more than any of us, the sort of the DC comic universe goes back into the, you know, it's not different to Marvel, whatever, it's very much in that, isn't it? In that space of the horror. So going back to those roots, really, I think was very interesting, and I think the world of Gotham really lends itself, because the sort of noirishness of that world really lends itself to a kind of horror movie space. So to me, that was really interesting to kind of, I don't know, cross over and play within those different, to play in those different sandpits, you know?
Right. No, I think it's very much like when you watch a horror film, why don't they turn on the light when they enter the room, right? And to me, the equivalent is, why would you live in Gotham City, anywhere in the DC universe? Because they can both be horrifying when you turn the corner. And you know, we were talking last night, you touched upon it. To me, it's really exciting to see DC Studios expand into the space. For you longtime fans, you know that DC Comics is not just about superheroes. The history of DC, certainly in the 50s, 60s, and 70s even, the bulk of the line were romance comics, horror comics, war comics, science fiction comics, and superheroes, until they really exploded, were a big chunk of it, but not all of it. And I do feel that it's very much in the DNA of DC to explore these subgenres or these other genres. And it's always exciting when the Clayface trailer first came out. I had a lot of friends who aren't necessarily into comics who said, like, that was exciting, I want to see that. So we're hitting large adjacent audiences in addition to our core audience. So getting back to Tom and your performance, can you talk a little bit about the journey of the character and why he makes the choices? It was to regain his past. What did you tap into because you go from desperate to innocent. I mean, there's a wide range of emotions you tap into. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I can. So he's trying to read...
And humor too. Those other pieces of it too, of which we'll get to.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's like, Matt is just trying to reclaim the life that's been taken from him.
Yeah.
By conventional means, as you mentioned earlier, but he's in Gotham City, so that's not going to work. And ultimately reaches a breaking point where, despite himself, he sort of like leans into it, and it's a psychological shitstorm. Yeah. then you go, oh, I'm just going to seek retribution against those that have wronged me, and a gradual enjoyment of that power, which, yeah, you're right, there's a lot of different phases that we see Matt go through, but
I think that relatability up front is really important. You know, Matt, as an actor, his face is his instrument, and so if he were a violinist or something, it's like someone smashed up his hands, and so all he wants to do, as you say, is get back the life that he'd worked really hard to secure. And then, obviously, then it goes into the means by which he tries to do this through the Caitlin Core's Renew Lab and the process that she goes through. The sort of 5 minutes into the future science of, you know, what we put in our bodies, I think is also really relatable and speaks to us all. And what are we doing? And, you know, nanotechnology and all of that AI stuff and whatever, and biomedicine. And so that, and what that can do, and both the future possibilities of that for good, but also the risks and the dangers and the fears of that. So we kind of step into that world a little bit as well, I think.
There's a lot of cautionary tales in it, right? I mean, you and Naomi, who's the female, she's a scientist. She's also desperate at the beginning. She's desperate to kind of advance her scientific trials, and you guys end up in this partnership. You know, at the end of the day, I left the film, and I told you this, I felt very, like I was just served an amazing 3-course meal. Like it felt, the appetizers, the entree, dessert, it felt so intentional, the setups and the payoffs, and the thought and the detail that went into every scene. Like there's I don't want to give away spoilers, but I think you see it a little bit in the trailer, there's this nightclub called the Vesuvius, and when we went to set, they were talking about how the walls resemble raw meat, and how they pulled up images of modeled diseased skin to try to get certain textures and play them throughout. So the level of art direction was incredible. And the other thing I noticed is that there's humor throughout. Can you talk about the role of that and why that's important to what you do, which is to terrify and keep people balanced?
I mean, you know, the more dark you have, the more light you want to have. It's like with anything, it's like music, and in life, people are funny. And so for me, any film, it should have humor, and we really lean into it. And I think some really funny moments in the movie, deliberately. And so we're trying to, it's like a roller coaster ride where there's ups and downs, where you're really grossed out, and then you're kind of, you want to get people leaning in, and then you want to kind of throw them back, and then, but the humor, I think, it just kind of warms you to the characters, it settles you, and then you can sucker punch people. So, I mean, but it's not cynical, it's just that actually within I just think, you know, if you spend time with anybody, like, people are funny, and so make that part of your world. I don't like worlds where they're just grim, you know, or just dark. I think you can really enjoy it. I think there's some good jokes, right? You're going to entertain people. You want to ride. You want to be entertained, and so, right?
Yeah, but it's also humor and fear are sort of like bedfellows, aren't they?
That's right, yeah.
And I'm always surprised by where I find humor coming out.
Well, we talk about good and bad laughs a lot, and it's also in the ick. When you're looking at stuff that's really icky, and like and you hear laughs, and you can learn to kind of tell where it's like they're laughing, and you go, no, they're laughing because they're kind of nervous and enjoying it, you know. And so again, there's that as another, right? I mean, particularly in that scene, there's a scene on an airplane, which I think is in the trailer, where his eyes have got an issue and he's got to resolve it, and he goes to the plane bathroom. But I also have a fear of turbulence. So,
unlike the rest of us who love it, right?
It's like, but it's all about all those fears. You want some things that people can relate to. So not only he has to contend with trying to do this, there is some horrendous turbulence going on. And we had the whole plane on a gimbal. And so Tom actually had to do it. He had prosthetic makeup on his eyes, and he was doing it, and he was, at one point I think we took the real scissors away, because we had that toilet cubicle on a gimbal and it was going. And
I was saying to James, because we had 3 sets of scissors for safety, and one of these scissors are real scissors, and one of the scissors has sort of like a rubber tip. But I'd figured out a way of getting the real scissors underneath the prosthetics, and if I got it just on my eyelid as opposed to right in my eye, I was like, I can cut this, I can actually cut the thing. But James is,
well, I'm leaning in and going, okay, we can do this, and the ADs are slightly losing their minds, going, no, this can be an insurance claim. But it's all in...
That is one of my favorite scenes in the movie, and then when you watch it with test audiences, you see people literally you see them freak out. That's what I meant to say. And then there are other scenes where you just see people look down, and it's a very common, like, they cannot look, and you guys do not hold back.
What you see in the trailer, it sort of goes further still than, you know.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it goes way further.
Yes. It was masterfully done, and that's what I was talking about. Like, it felt very intentional. Like I felt I was being manipulated in all the right ways. Like to laugh here, and then to be shocked here, and then to care here, and then to have something forcefully ripped away. You know,
and I think the film has a real heart to it. There's an emotional story to it. I mean, as Guillermo del Toro always says, the best horror films have heart and horror. And that's really important to me. I don't want to make a film that's just clockwork, that's just, oh, okay, we jump scared you there and whatever, and there's no kind of nutritional value in that. So I like it to really get under the skin and for you to really care about the characters. I think Tom does an amazing job about you getting to care about Matt Hagen, and then once you're caring about him, taking you to some very dark places.
Anyway, and one last thing I want to kind of talk about. So when I was on that set visit, I don't even know what inspired this, other than Tom was so gracious with his time and very friendly and open, and I was like, maybe I'll spring, like, maybe he's got some artistic talent. I said, look, do you want to collaborate on a drawing while you're just in between acting? Because I know that's what actors want to do. And so I gave him a piece of paper. You guys know, like, when you're in grade school, maybe they don't do this anymore, where you draw the outline of your hand and then you make it into a turkey, right? I do this all the time, and that's how I hone my skills. And so I said, look, Tom, why don't you put a line on a piece of paper, and I'll use that as inspiration, and I will be inspired by what you put on to create something. So
when Jim says collaborating,
it is a collaboration. This is Tom's contribution. I like the energy. I like the passion of the line.
It's great squiggle.
Great negative
As
space.
squiggles go.
Yes, I would say it's clearly an 8.5 out of 10 as far as squiggles go. And then, so out of that squiggle, while he went back and went back on set to act in the darkness, I then transformed that squiggle into, oh, that's me drawing in the dark. That's what I do. So I did that. So that is Tom and I's work. You can see Tom's holding line throughout, right? You guys can see that, right? So we just talk about Tom. We bring out Tom, so you guys can see the Dude, that was amazing. Look, I think what drew me to your performance is that you straddle that balance between innocence and intensity, right? You are a very likable character. We're rooting for you. You're a kid from the slums, from the Narrows, who's made it his way to Coast City. It's on the verge of stardom, and it's an emotionally complex role. You are dealing with a lot of trauma from your past. Can you talk a little bit about, like, your journey with this character and what you brought to it and what interested you in playing Matt Hagen?
Yeah.
A lot there, so take your time. Essay question.
Do I need to get closer to this? Hello, everybody.
Oh, you know, also, this is Tom's first time at Comic-Con, so we need to give him a proper...
I'm so excited to be here. I'm so excited to sort of launch the film with James here, with you guys. To answer your question, Jim, or to try to answer your question, I think the thing that's interesting about Matt is he's always just trying to be good. And I think throughout the whole thing, he wants to, despite all these challenges that are thrown against him, he has admirably made a life for himself, and then that's brutally taken away from him. And throughout the whole film and feature, he's just trying to regain his life back, and there should be an element of relatability to everybody within that. You know, if you, despite all odds, made a life for yourself, and then that's taken away from you, how far would you go, and what would you do to regain that life?
For sure, sure. And honestly, even the decision sort of leads him on this road to both redemption and horrific things, this escalation of events. I think most people would have made that choice, or we would not have been able to hold back on some of the choices he made. They seem very natural and
But it gets pretty primal very quickly, and it's ultimately about a loss of identity.
Yes.
And how desperate any of us would get with that stripping of identity. It's kind of fairly fruitful psychological grunt.
Right. Yeah, Clayface is very much like his primal self, right? And you know, like in revenge films, right? In